Hi, my name is Sabrina Page, and I'm here today to explain to you why Walters State Community College needs to have a standalone crisis communication plan. As you know, Walters State Community College is just one of 13 community college or two-year colleges, in addition to 27 technology centers that provide educational opportunities in the state of Tennessee as members of the Tennessee Board of Regents. Walters State works in 4 counties in the state in the east part of Tennessee. Those counties are Claiborne, Greene, Hamblin, and Sevier. And while most colleges and K through 12 have developed emergency management or emergency preparedness plan to respond to incidences, crises can occur at any time and develop because of these incidences. As I've defined, a crisis has the potential to damage the institution's reputation, image, and or financial stability. Much is defined as part of an emergency management plan. Crisis can be precipitated by a natural or man-made disaster. As many of you all may recollect, we had the wildfires in Gatlinburg last year about this time. So while yes, a crisis can precipitate from a man-made or natural disaster, Coombs also defined or identified crises to include that of rumors, workplace violence, technical errors or accidents that are due to equipment failure, technical error that causes product harm that can precipitate product recall, human errors that happen all the time, human errors that cause product harm, again, precipitating the need to recall a product. It can also be part of an intentional error, not human error, not as an accident. It can be due to an organizational misdeed that can or cannot or may not cause injury, and it can also include misconduct by employees. As we're talking about higher education, crises can include, but are not limited to, sexual harassment, misappropriation of funds, and it doesn't even have to be substantiated. It could be rumors that have caused a crisis that can impact the idea of a crisis. So if we're talking about a crisis versus an incident, crisis communication, whenever you're talking about them, are very strategic in identifying. It's very communication oriented. This is what we know, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to resolve it, that sort of thing. It's a larger scale because it's going to impact our overall bottom line. You know, it's all about the money, and it's reputation focused. Reputation is everything. If we lose our reputation, then we lose the students. Students, you know, we have a number of community colleges and 4-year colleges in the state of Tennessee, and because we do have free college for people who've just graduated high school, as well as people who, older adults who were not able to go to college, so we're providing funding free for them to go. So they can go anywhere. They don't have to go to Walters State. So very reputation focused, incident focused, much like emergency management plans are very tactical. How are we going to get from point A to point B? What do we need to do? It's very action oriented. We have trainings that just came out today on earthquakes. We do have earthquakes in East Tennessee, but not to the extent that you would imagine that we would have a training focused on it. And we have training focused on an earthquake. I can understand wildfires since we did just have those, or maybe an active shooter, someone with a knife, that sort of thing. So emergency management, emergency preparedness plans are very focused and very useful in a higher education. They're also typically smaller once the event is over and done. You know, the crisis communication plan would come into effect of how we've dealt with that particular situation and the ongoing after effects? Was counseling provided? What sort of safety issues are we putting into place? That sort of thing. And it's operations focused. What did we do? How did we respond? That sort of thing. So why does Walters State need 2 plans? Okay, so our areas of responsibility. Yes, communication is part of the Emergency Preparedness Plan, but it's part of that focused incident. A crisis communication plan is overarching. While the event may not occur, while a situation of sexual harassment or misappropriation of funds or misappropriation of authority may never occur, in all of these cases, communication impacts reputation, impacts how the information is gotten out. So we also need to have a protocol for invoking a related plan, and that must be clearly delineated, because we have a number of people that are part of the Emergency Preparedness Plan. You only have a limited number of people who are part of the actual crisis communication plan and implementation. For both of these, the crisis preparedness, crisis communication, as well as emergency preparedness, need to be tested and exercised at the same time. Like I said, a crisis can occur from an incident, but a crisis can also occur because of other events. So it allows us as a community to understand the parts that we play or may not play in a particular situation or a given event. So who are our stakeholders? Like I said, we're located in 4 counties, but our reach is much further. It's the entire East Tennessee area. So we have current prospective students, faculty, staff, parents. The one group I don't have on here is alumni. Alumni are impacted, right? Word of mouth. If you're a great college, if a person had a good experience, then they're going to talk about that. And that's going to cause people, family and friends, to want to come to your institution. However, if they're talking negatively, as some other colleges and programs, if they're talking negatively about, people aren't wanting to go there. We also have trustees, the people that are, who are over us. We have our neighbors who want to know what's going on, city and county leaders, as well as media. And because we do accept state and federal funding, we have to have those state and federal officials. And then, of course, the people who are on here are the Tennessee Board of Regents, and they might fall under the state official category. So are the objectives, the overall objectives of this plan? It's to help us to better communicate facts quickly. It's to be able to update information regularly as the circumstances change. It's to ensure the safety of the Walters State community and ensure continued operation. It's to avoid any lasting damage to the institution based on our honesty and the speed of the information that we provide, because in a crisis, people are going to look for information, and if we're not timely and open and honest and transparent about the information that we give, then they're going to go someplace else. So when should a crisis team be convened? When should we all get together? So that's up to the president of the college or his or her designee. They're going to identify whether the event is so significant that it impacts the reputation of the college and poses a risk to our reputation and to our any resources that we might have. Funding is extremely important. We lose the funding based on reputation or a lack of response, then we'll lose those resources. So who's the crisis communication team? That would be the president of the college, the director of public information, as well as the vice president of communication and marketing. These are 2 individuals, they're not the same. Our chief of police, office of general counsel, because they're going to allow us to know what can and can't be said legally Tennessee Board of Regents representative, because we are a member of that organization. Information Educational and Technology section, IET, because they hold all of our computing. They hold the passwords and the access to the social media accounts of Twitter, Facebook, the website, as well as any blogs that may be out there. Depending on where the situation is, if the event happens externally, one of the other campuses, of course, the Dean of Distance Education needs to be added to that list, as well as the Dean of each campus. They need to know what's going on. Members will be added depending on the situation in the area. So it's not just these, but these are the main ones. So where are we going to have this or hold the team meetings? On the main campus, should something happen, it would be in the College Center Foundation Room. If it is at one of the adjacent campuses or satellite campuses, then it'll be in a conference room that's adjacent to the dean's office, because we want to have access immediately to whatever information. So our supplies, communication and marketing office are going to ensure that we have press packets. We'll ensure that we have identification badges. These are for members of the press as well as any external people, because general counsel isn't necessarily located there on campus. So this allows us to know who the players are. Parking passes for all of the people. Tennessee Board of Regents would be bringing people in. If we have any external federal individuals, any of those, we would need to know who they were and allow them to park. And then, of course, we'd have a copy of the Crisis Communication Plan as well as the Emergency Preparedness Plan. In addition to the supplies you see here, many of or all of our staff and faculty have their own laptops as well as smartphones, and those would need to be brought. Why? Because we need to have instant access, and due to the Wi-Fi capabilities, this will allow us instant viewing of what's going on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, that sort of thing. We would also have, in all of the conference rooms, they already have televisions. We would just need to have access to radios, and we could live stream those on our laptops as well. So how or why, what sort of media are we talking about? This particular infographic talks about a response, particularly using social media or Twitter, push a dark site to go live depending on the situation, monitoring of social media because we need to know what people are talking about and how they're talking about it. We text message alerts. I've already talked about our senator alert bulletins. Those come through text messages. They also get pushed to the public service announcement. And then, of course, we'd have an emergency email notification to let people know that something's going on. Implementation of this plan. We know that Walter State's goal is to communicate quickly, and so we need to communicate within at least 30 minutes from the notification of the event, and we have to be able to provide them with timely updates, because like I said, people are going to go where they're going to find information. If we're not talking, they're going to find somebody who is. So immediate response, gather the facts and consult with the president. See if the rumors or the information that the news media just broke, or that we just found out through an internal audit, whether that information is actually correct. So then we need to provide that information accurately and quickly, and we'll have to continually talk about it. How are we going to present that? And that message has to be consistent, not only in the news media, but on our social media platforms as well. For the traditional media, we need to put that information in writing, post it to the webpage, senator bulletin, send media alerts as appropriate. And I'm not sure if Walter State has a blog that's available. I've never seen one, but that doesn't mean that there isn't one. I'm just not privy to that as an adjunct faculty member. When we talk about media and social media, we talk about the website, Facebook, Twitter, and a blog. And this infographic just tells us whether or not, or gives an example visually as to whether or not to respond to any, as they call them, trolls. Is this a site dedicated to bashing and degrading others, as we're monitoring? If it's not, then we're just going to, if we say no, then we're going to go down to the next one. Rager. Is this a posting of a rant, a rage, or a joke? So no. If it is, then we have to decide: are we going to monitor only, or are we going to make a response? If we're going to make a response, what is the response that we're going to give? So this just gives us a way to identify how we're going to deal with social media and respond to that. When we talk about traditional media, like I said, Walters State encompasses a large portion of East Tennessee, and so these are just the locations in the cities that in which we have campuses. We also have people that come from Kentucky that's not listed on here, but they can get their information from the Tazewell radio and television stations. So our secondary response have somebody that's going to be there to take notes, to help us figure out what we have and have not already said and talked about. This will allow us to recognize what we can or can't say to the public, to the media, through any of our sources. Will help us to determine whether or not a response is needed or whether we can just let it pass. Prior to any of this, we've developed a template for responses or possible responses, so to ensure that the message that we want out is getting out and it's consistent across all mediums. And then this will help us to determine who the spokesperson or people needs to be. If it's the president and, say, finance, if it's the president and the academic affairs, director of athletics, that sort of thing. So we'll decide then who those actual spokespeople need to be. And then this plan will also help to develop an education program to train those who may possibly have to speak to the media at some point, give them some media training. Initial training would be at the time of onboarding, and then annual training would be conducted. And then, of course, we would update the list of contacts and who would and would not need to be trained for media training to ensure that we have the most up-to-date information. So, are there any questions about the information I've given you and why it's so important to have a standalone crisis communication plan in addition to a communication plan being part of the Emergency Preparedness Plan? Thank you.